Today's episode, we have Sarah Jane Hicks, all the way from Vancouver, Canada, Senior SDR at Predictable Revenue.
Learn how Sarah is getting 20 to 35% reply rates on her scalable, personalized LinkedIn campaigns. You don't want to miss this. Your success is our success, so let's get started.
From the heart of Silicon Valley in beautiful San Francisco, California, welcome to the SDR Live podcast with Marcos and Andy.
Super excited to be back on another episode of the SDR Live. Today we have Sarah Hicks. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks guys. Excited to be here.
Oh yeah, it's going to be such a great episode. We've been wanting to get you on a show for a while now, and I think what's really interesting is kind of your strategy on how you're turning LinkedIn engagement into prospects. It's kind of like a reverse engineer of Beck Holland. So I'll kind of let you maybe talk about that when we get into the meat and potatoes. But what the audience wants to know is kind of, who you are, where you work, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, among a couple of other things, a outbound SDR at Predictable Revenue. So we are about a 55 to 60 person company at the moment. And what we do, funnily enough, is what I do in my role. So we help other companies build their outbound process, or we actually take on the prospecting for them. And I do that same thing for Predictable Revenue as a company. So I'm the only outbound SDR. I have an inbound SDR as a colleague. We've got 2 account executives, and then we've got our head of sales, who I and the rest of the team report up to. My kind of role with Outbound, because we are a company that's big on kind of experimenting and validating and finding new outbound strategies, I'm luckily given a lot of autonomy in my outbound role. So I get to kind of create my own strategies, as well as using the kind of tried and true methods that we have as a company. And one of those methods or strategies that I came up with is one of them that I'm going to share with all you guys. So basically the day-to-day is making those cold calls, creating the emails, sending the emails, sending LinkedIn connection requests, and just doing the good old prospecting.
Oh man, you're speaking my language now. So that's really interesting, right? Because you're one of the first SDRs at Predictable Revenue. So I'm curious, like from a territory standpoint, do you go after, large enterprises, smaller companies, and then also kind of what's your territory? Is that US? Is it Canada? Is it, China? I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting question. And I think Predictable Revenue kind of falls outside of the norm in a lot of ways here. Something that we even say to companies is like, you've got to hone your ICP. You got to know exactly who is the title at what type of company that you guys can help. And funnily enough, we don't really have an ICP because our ICP is not industry specific really, or kind of size of company specific. It's just a company who either wants help building out their outbound sales process for the first time, or they've kind of struggled and they want to scale it, or it's a company that doesn't actually even want to do the prospecting and wants to hand off that SDR piece to someone else. So we can work with a wide range of companies. Some of our case study companies include like biosciences companies, all the way to services companies. We have a one client who negotiates food and beverage contracts for enterprises, that kind of stuff. And then, of course, lots of companies in the SaaS world, maybe startups or earlier stage companies that just don't have the resources or the know-how to build out that outbound team themselves. So work with a whole bunch of different types of companies.
That's so interesting because I'm almost in the same position where at Inside View, we sell data to sales and marketing professionals, which means everybody at any company has a sales and marketing team, which means like I can sell to everybody. And it is like a pro and a con because you have just so much green field that you could go into, but at the same time, it's overwhelming. I'm curious, how do you prioritize how you spend your time on your day-to-day, which accounts to go after?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we've thought about quite a bit as a team. We've thought about taking this really account-based approach, but we don't really have key accounts. You can't point a finger at an account and say, if I can get in, I know that they have a problem that I can solve, because the company might not want to outsource their sales, or they might have a good enough sales team themselves. So it's tough to take a truly account-based approach. So what I rather do to kind of narrow down who I'll be reaching out to is look for a trigger event. So something that kind of shows me that they're interested in the problem that we can solve. One of the ways I do that is looking out for LinkedIn posts, and I'll go into that in my strategy a little bit later. Or it might be things like they attended a webinar on a certain topic, or it might be that they are attending a conference that is on a certain topic, or they attended talks at a conference on a certain topic. So basically what I want to try to do is find out if they are interested in or looking at solutions like ours. You're obviously not going to be able to tell if they're actually out there searching for your stuff. So you've got to be kind of tactical with what you kind of use as a trigger. But with any outbound right now, being ultra personalized and ultra relevant is the most important thing to do. And an easy way to do that is by using kind of some kind of trigger event to say, I saw you did X. They actually did it. So good start. And then tying that into, your value prop or whatever else.
Great. And I'm really curious in learning your strategy, but before we kind of move on to, some of the slides that you prepared, can you talk to us about kind of the best quarter or month you've ever had from a quota attainment perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best month I ever had was actually this strategy. So it's a good one for me to share with you guys. So basically, I achieved 130% quota in this month. So that felt good. And it was actually probably when I had been working for the company for maybe 7-8 months. And usually in an outbound role, you're ramping up over the course of about 3 to 4 months. You're probably hitting quota consistently from 4 months on. But it doesn't mean that you're comfortable and like good at hitting quota. And that's definitely what I experienced. So I learned all the best practices. I learned from all the people around me, from my managers, whatever. And by month 4 was like, okay, I managed to get my 10 meetings that month for the very first time. But I just felt this like sense of impending doom with each end of the month, because I was like, okay, I booked the 10 meetings and I exhausted my pipeline and I'm starting from literal ground zero. Where am I going to find the next 10 meetings? Like, what am I supposed to do? Especially because, as you mentioned, Andy, I've got to try and like find the accounts from this like vast, endless sea of potential clients. And yeah, it was tough. So basically each month was like a slog, and I was like, okay, just doing like 25 different campaigns, reaching out to as many people as I could to try and get these meetings. And finally, this strategy was one that I was like, oh man, I can like repeat this ad nauseum. I can do this every month. It usually works pretty well. And I was like, whew. Thank goodness. So not only did it mark my most successful month in terms of quota, but it also marked the beginning of my like not having a panic attack every single day at work.
You're getting me excited just kind of talking about that. And I'm like really curious. I'm sure the audience is too. So if you could, share your screen and get into the tactical advice to repeat this, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, you got us pumped up.
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. So as I mentioned, working for predictable revenue, doing for predictable revenue what predictable revenue does as a company. So luckily, I kind of started from a foundation of a lot of best practices. Predictable revenue has tried and failed at a lot of different outbound strategies. So a great place to learn how to do these things, and then being given a lot of kind of autonomy to then go out and try things myself. So that is what led me to do this. So turning LinkedIn engagement into prospects. Talked about what predictable revenue is. That's fine. We can skip through that. So these are the kind of steps that go into building this type of sequence. So the first thing you're going to do, and I'll of course go into more detail about each of these things in a sec, but first thing you're doing is finding prospects by looking at who engages in posts by thought leaders in your space. Next, I'll go on to how to actually build the lists of prospects and then sequence them. And then I'll talk about some kind of limitations and risks associated with this type of sequence, but how you can solve them. So as you guys mentioned, this is kind of a reverse engineering of Beck Holland's personalization at scale method. You can watch this on YouTube. It'll give you kind of a lot of foundational knowledge on how you can do this for yourself, whether you do it her actual original way or my kind of reverse engineered way. But a lot of the stuff is borrowed from her. So where do you start? as I mentioned, you're finding prospects by looking at engagement on thought leaders' posts. So what does that mean? A thought leader is somebody in your space that is posting constantly or at least relatively frequently on LinkedIn. They're people who are sharing kind of thoughts that pertain to what you do as a company or challenges that people that you prospect have. What I like to do is keep a list of these types of people who are often posting good stuff and just have them in a spreadsheet. And then what I can do is just go check their profiles periodically. Obviously, I'm following them on LinkedIn, so it'll all pop up on my feed, but it might get lost in other stuff. So have that list going. For instance, thought leaders in my space, because of course I'm reaching out to sales leaders, are people like Jake Dunlap, Beck Holland, Scott Barker, just people like that are posting a lot of content on sales stuff. And so then once you're following those lists of thought leaders, you want to keep an eye out for relevant posts with high engagement and then save those for later, because when you find a few good ones, you may not want to make, like 5-6 sequences right now, but you can stick those links in your same spreadsheet and you can use those to build a later sequence. And then when it's time to actually launch the sequence, you do this. So I'll take you through this step by step.
Awesome.
So
just a quick tip.
Oh yeah.
Just a quick tip to the audience members. If you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator and you insert like the titles that are relevant, you can go to the part where it says like last activity within 30 days. That'll also be kind of a great way to fill your funnel with people who are those thought leaders who are very active on LinkedIn.
Totally. That is a really, really helpful tip. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
Cool. So viable post checklist. So how to make sure that the post that you're going to use is actually going to be useful for this type of sequence. So it's written by one of those popular thought leaders, like I mentioned. So Colin Cadmus, Mark A. Smith, etc. The content of the post is relevant to what I do at my company. So it's relevant to a pain that we solve, a topic we're knowledgeable about, something that I can tie my value prop into. And I'll show you what that looks like, but something that I could relate what we do as a company to. And then in terms of engagement, I wanted to have upward of 100 likes or reactions and upward of 50 comments. The reason for that being not everybody in there is going to fit your ICP. Especially in my case in sales, it's going to be like a lot of SDRs, a lot of AEs reacting or engaging with that post. They're obviously not a good fit. So you want to start with a large enough sample size that when you thin it out, you've got enough people to actually reach out to with this type of campaign. And on the right here, this is actually the very first post that I ever tried this with. So as you can see, it is ultra relevant to predictable revenue and what we do, because it's actually like calling out predictable revenue as a company. So not every single example is going to be this peachy, but basically Jake Dunlap was saying, in a nutshell, predictable revenue is old, doesn't work anymore, it sucks. Moving on, it's not good anymore. And then you can see down the bottom there, Aaron actually responded. So Aaron Ross being our co-founder, co-CEO, and author of the book, Predictable Revenue. He responded being like, you know what, Jake, you're right. Like people are taking the predictable revenue methodology too far and things need to be modernized in a certain way. And I was like, perfect. Because a lot of companies out there don't know that we actually don't adhere to what was written in the book 10 years ago to a T. We have modernized, we've changed things. So I was like, great, I can use this as the content, reach out to the people and say, I'll tell you what I said.
The negative insight.
So here you're going to isolate a quote either from the actual body of text in that original post, or this is where you're going to pull in a quote from somebody's comment if it was relevant. So for instance, I'll show you guys what I used from this post here by Jake Dunlap. This little bit down here. Oh, wow, that's helpful. This bit down here, we need creativity, outcomes, and automations to make sure our people are doing their best work every day. So Jake Dunlap was saying, according to the predictable revenue methodology, we're focusing too much on calls and emails and metrics there. We need to focus on different metrics now. And so I called that out. If the person just liked it and didn't say anything relevant in their comment, I said what really captured my attention was, and the quote there. The next bit is the what if question. And this is where you tie in your value prop to the pain that was mentioned in the quote. So for instance, what if I told you, or what if predictable revenue has actually been continually testing and iterating on the original methodology? And we have something called Outbound Labs, which is actually a program that runs tests on the newest outbound strategies. So I would call that out and say, what if predictable revenue has actually been running continual tests to stay on the cutting edge of the changing sales landscape? And we could share some of our learnings with you. So that's that what if question that is tying in the pain that was mentioned to your value prop as a company. And then finally, call to action. And this is Bex as well. She likes to do the give me a chance to unpack that on a quick call. How's your calendar looking on day? So as you can see, this is actually a very short email. It's only 4 sentences, and it's following a very strict kind of structure. And I think that's great. You don't want to be giving too much in the first email. Nobody wants to read about what your company does, what you've done for other people, how you do it, who your clients are. They don't have time for that. They don't even know if they want to know about you yet. But if you call out that pain right away and say, what if we could help you solve it? Then they're listening. Then you can, continue that story in the next email.
So I had a question on this real quick, which is, all right, you're searching for leads or prospects via comments or likes on your LinkedIn post, but then you revert to an email. Is there a reason why you're not doing like LinkedIn emails or direct messages on LinkedIn?
So I will actually incorporate LinkedIn touches into this whole sequence. It's going to be a multi-channel sequence. And to be honest, I haven't tried it just over LinkedIn. It is probably something that you can do. But the reason that I'm sticking to email is because through outreach, it's easier to track metrics. It's difficult to track metrics when you're doing everything in LinkedIn because it's up to you to look at every single connection request, see if it's been accepted, see what the message says. You've got to do everything manually. Whereas if I send out an email over outreach, it's going to let me know who's responded. It's going to let me know what messaging is working best in the kind of percentages of opened, replied, all that kind of stuff. So that's the reason that I'm starting with the first couple of touch points over email through outreach. But I, of course, will have some LinkedIn steps.
I have a question, and this is a new tool that I found almost last week. It's called Octopus. Can't remember if it's like .io or something, but it basically is, think of outreach for LinkedIn. So essentially you can put people in like your campaign in LinkedIn and then do connects, and then it'll actually show you like, 18% of the 100 people you sent connections to connected. And then you could also put them in a campaign to do a follow-up email as well. Have you heard of that, or have you done?
We sometimes use a different tool internally called Expandy.io, similar principle. And I think there are a few different tools. There's like GrowthX as well that would do something similar, but you still can't do the actual sending of the LinkedIn message. And then it still involves a bit of like back and forth where you've got to go to the underlying inbox and then go to the tool. And sometimes there's like a bit of a delay. I think LinkedIn deliberately makes it difficult for you to automate stuff through them because they don't want that to be done. So it just is a little bit more labor intensive to do it through either just through LinkedIn or through those tools, at least in my experience. And you know what, maybe these tools have improved since I've even tried. But yeah, I would say this strategy can be a little bit labor intensive in other ways that I'll touch on. And so I'm trying to get rid of some of that extra labor there.
Yep, no worries. That's good advice.
Cool.
Definitely check out Octopus CRM.
Cool. I will. Yeah. Sounds interesting. So this example that I have up on the screen here is following that template that I just shared, but if the prospect liked the post. So I've got my first little bit here, which is the trigger. This is the referencing the original post. So I saw you liked Jake Dunlap's post about the predictable revenue methodology being too predictable. The next bit is the part that really captured my attention, which, because they didn't comment, is just an excerpt from that post that I think is relevant. It's that same quote that I called out to you guys a couple minutes ago there. And then I've got my what if question, which relates to what the post was about. People think all we do is kind of like mass email blasts, but what if we could provide you with creative, outcome-driven, multi-channel prospecting at scale? Give me a chance to unpack that. So as you can see in this email, I'm not even telling them what we do. I'm just saying, what if we could do this thing for you that I imagine you want? Because everybody wants creative, multi-channel prospecting at scale. That's the dream. So that's the liked. And then I've got the commented coming up here. So this is, of course, only if the prospect commented something relevant. If they've tagged their friend or said like, dope, this rocks, don't need to quote it. But it's exactly the same template structure. This is an example from a different thought leader. So Todd Capone is another person that I follow. He also posts stuff that's really useful for me for these sequences. Same, saw your comment on Todd Capone's post about making cold calls and emails stand out to prospects. You mentioned in your comment, it's important to mention what matters to them and a hypothesis on what might help. That's good. That ties into what we do at Predictable Revenue. So that's why I called that out. And then the what if question. What if we could help you nail messaging based on discovering the pain and provide you with creative, outcome-driven, multi-channel prospecting at scale? Again, that's the dream. And then the messaging based on pain relates to what they said of you need to figure out what matters to them. So that's why I use that in my what if that ties into our value prop. So that's an example of how you can do it if they commented something relevant, and then it's that same CTA. Yeah, so that is kind of how you build out those emails. That's the structure of the emails. That's where you find the prospects. Now let's talk about how you actually get these prospects off this post and, into your CRM. So this is how you build the lists. So you're going to build the list, including all of the different criteria that you usually would when building lists at your company. There's just a couple of other columns that you're going to add to that list. So what you're going to include is a liked column and a commented column, because of course you want to keep that comment if it's relevant and know that they commented, or you want to know if they liked, because then that's when you're going to decide whether you say, I saw you liked blah, 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 or I saw you commented on blah, blah, blah. That's of course very important. And then, you're going to copy and paste that comment if it's relevant into commented. So as you can see in this, test example, this person saying, wow, I have this same problem. That's definitely something that I would want to hang on to. Or they're like, yeah, totally agree with this. I also have this problem. Super helpful for me. Those are the types of people that are going to love to hear from you. So you want to keep track of who liked and you want to keep track of who commented. There will be instances where they do both. A person might like it and comment. If the comment is relevant, that's going to take precedent. That's kind of self-explanatory. So that's a little bit about what criteria I'd be looking for to build the list here. And then let's talk about sequencing them. So if you are using a sales enablement tool, like Outreach.io, but there are lots of other ones. They all kind of do the same thing. You have different fields that are mapped. So from your list, you've got, first name, last name, all these kinds of things. They're going to map to a specific place in your sales enablement tool, like Outreach. And you usually can pick where things are mapped to. So if you want to do this type of sequence frequently, if you try it out once or twice and it works for you, you can actually add some custom variables into your sales enablement tool that will allow you to map the likes and comments to a field called liked, commented in your sales enablement tool. But otherwise, you might have something like prospect notes or account fit notes or kind of a more random custom field. And you can just map those liked and commented columns to that for the time being, if you don't have the capacity or the ability to go in and change some of those custom variables or custom fields within your enablement tool. And that's what I did at the beginning. We just had a couple of, random notes fields. And I was like, okay, I know that shows up on the prospect object within my Outreach. And when I'm going through my sequence and going through my tasks, I'll be able to see that on the prospect. And that's all that matters to me. So I just made sure it mapped somewhere that I was going to see it when I was doing those tasks so that I could pull that information into my email as I needed it. So this, I didn't know how this was going to work. I gave it a go, reached out to these people, didn't know if it was going to work very well or not. And it did. I got a way higher response rate than I ever had. Of course, I booked way more meetings than I ever had as well. So of course, lots of positive response rates, but something that was really interesting to me was the positive negative response that I got. So usually, and you guys who are doing outbound prospecting will know this, you can send emails into a void and never hear anything back, ever. You don't know if it was a good email. A few people respond positively. No one else even talks to you. Maybe they're even clicking you into spam. You just notice that your domain is shot after a while. You don't get this kind of feedback on whether your email was any good. And that's fine. You've sort of just got to resign yourself to that as an SDR. But I got a lot of these positive, negative responses. So people saying, you know what? I don't want this right now, or now's not the time, or I'm not interested, but that was a really good email. I really like that email. And that's amazing. That's not something that you get every day when doing outreach as an SDR. So it was a great feedback for me to learn that, this is a good approach and I should definitely do it again. But it was also great for that spam issue that I talked about, because something that builds or maintains your email reputation, your email domain's reputation, is back and forth with other people. Google and Outlook and all these things are kind of got all these algorithms that are tracking what you're doing. And if you're just sending out a whole bunch of emails to a bunch of people and they're getting clicked into spam, or they're just never getting responded to, your email domain is not going to stay healthy for very long. But with these people responding back to me, that maintained my domain health.
Yeah.
That was something that was a super added bonus that I just didn't see coming. So yeah, it was great for hitting my quota, of course. It was an unusually high positive response rate, but then even, leaps and bounds ahead of that, just the response rate in general. Usually I don't think you get such a large, just like positive negatives. Usually you'll get maybe a no thanks if you're lucky, but these were people saying like, this is great. Do you want to be my SDR? Or
So I'm curious on, you're probably, really more adept at LinkedIn than I am, because you're actually looking and scrolling through the comments. So I'm curious, like, say for example, I used to run strategic accounts. So I actually had accounts assigned to me, right? And I would follow industry leaders, but it'd be like really hard for me to go in the comments. Do you know if there's like a feature where I could actually go through and like find out which ones are pertaining to a certain account, or is it just like Control F? I don't know.
Something like, I don't know if this Octopus CRM that you guys were talking about would do this, but Expandy does have this feature where you can like pick a post and basically sift through it, like get it to pull all the contacts from it, that kind of thing. I actually never did it through Expandy. It was more kind of like a manual process that it is very labor intensive. It is time consuming. That's something that I'll touch on kind of in the little limitations and challenges section at the end here. And I do have some ideas of how you can kind of mitigate that. But what I would say is that this approach is better not for an account-based approach. So as we chatted about at the beginning, I basically have free reign. I can reach out to whoever I want to as long as I'm booking meetings. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating my account list based on who is already engaging in these posts. If you are doing a true account-based approach where you have a list of accounts you're supposed to reach out to, that's when you actually want to do the original Beck Holland version of this. She speaks on how to do it for an account-based approach when you've got your list of contacts and now you're just looking for that trigger or that reason for outreach to those people on LinkedIn. So yeah, I would recommend going back and watching that YouTube video that she has on her personalization at scale method. And then as Andy mentioned, there's that ability to look in LinkedIn Sales Navigator and filter by the people who have posted or there's activity on LinkedIn in the past 30 days. That's when you'd want to do that too. So in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but you can add a Boolean list of like your accounts. You don't have to just kind of search for all new accounts within Sales Navigator. You can put in your list of who you're looking for or what accounts you're looking at. And then once you've done that, you can filter that by the people who have engaged or posted in 30 days. So if you're going account-based, go that route. If you are not going account-based and you've got kind of a wider possibility, go this route.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for like kind of clarifying that for me.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just curious, what did you respond with to that comment on the right? With that said, I'm hiring for an inbound sales role at the moment. Interested?
I think I just said something along the lines of, like happy where I am at the moment, but I'll keep you in mind or something.
Oh,
gotcha. If you buy from us, maybe we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, so that is sort of it. As you can see here, this is a screenshot from my outreach when I was first doing all these campaigns. They're really easy to replicate because they're just cloned. Like I literally just clone the last sequence, change it up a little bit so that it's relevant to the new post and has the right quotes in it, but it's exactly the same template for every single one. as you can see, there aren't necessarily huge amounts of prospects going into these, because once you're filtering it out for your ICP, there's probably not going to still be hundreds that fit within your ICP. But generally speaking, on average, this is a much higher open rate and a much higher positive response rate. You can see at the top there, I did a Kevin Dorsey one that apparently just was not very good. Only 4.2% replied. That's fine. I got something wrong there. But generally speaking, yeah, it is still pretty good. But by comparison to the rest of these, down at the very bottom there is that Jake Dunlap one, which I said was the very first one that I ever did. It was a small sample size. It was only 14 contacted, but a 93% open rate, which is absolutely unheard of. I don't know why people wanted to open it.
What's your subject line?
It literally is the same for every single email, and it's not even that personalized. It's your like/comment on so-and-so's post.
Your like on...
But like, or comment. I don't even specify whether it's a like or a comment. I say your like/comment, because I was like, oh no, do I have to make 2 sequences now? I'll just make one and keep the same generic headline. But I think people don't remember what they did on LinkedIn, right? But you're kind of peaked. You're like, oh no, what did I say? Like, what did I like/comment on Jake Dunlap's post? I don't remember. So you click on it, and then I remind you, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, useful. And then whatever. So it's been a massively, a good subject line, and you wouldn't think it would be, but
so it'd be like an example would be like your like on Sarah Hicks's post.
It literally would be your like/comment on Sarah Hicks's post, regardless.
Dang, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
This is one where I think you could actually split it into 2 different sequences. Like you could have a sequence for likes and a sequence for comments, and then you would be able to say your like on blah 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 or your comment on blah blah blah. But in the case of the first like bunch that I tried, I didn't have 2 sequences. I just had the one. And so I just kept it generic, but people don't mind. They're like, what did I do?
That's awesome.
Right. Don't knock it if it's working. And 36% reply rates are unheard of.
Exactly.
For
Outbound.
So totally for outbound. So yeah, this was amazing for me. And that's why, as soon as I did this, I was like, okay, I need to do a company lunch and learn so that we can do this for our clients. And then after that, I think Beck got wind that because I did an episode on our podcast about this, and then she heard about it, and then she had me on a Chorus. She's now at Chorus on one of their webinars to talk about the 2 different ways you can do it, my reverse way and her original way. So that's another great podcast to watch or webinar to watch if you're doing account-based or if you're doing it like I am.
And you solely focus on LinkedIn. You don't go to like other social media platforms like Twitter.
Yeah, that's actually something that I'm going to touch on in the next section, because I think it depends on where your clients are, where they kind of want to get their information.
I know a lot of developer, engineer, IT persona are on Twitter instead of LinkedIn. And so anyways, sorry, go ahead.
That's a perfect segue. That is going to fall under this final topic, which is challenges and solutions. So yes, with any outbound strategy, it's not going to work for everybody. There is no silver bullet solution, unfortunately. You've got to figure out what's right for your company. But I tried to find ways that I could sort of expand this to work for as many different people as possible, prospecting into as many different industries. So right here, there's your question. What if I can't find thought leaders in my industry on LinkedIn? Or what if the people engaging with the LinkedIn post by a thought leader aren't the people that I want to prospect? So one of the ways you can do that, check Twitter, check somewhere else. So look at where your prospects exist. This is something that you can ask if you guys have like a case study or a happy client or something. You can ask whoever their account manager is, like, hey, would you mind on your next check-in asking for me? Like, where does this person like consume their content? And they'll, I'm sure, be happy to tell you. It might be somewhere like Twitter. It might be some random forum somewhere else that I've never heard of. But certainly a lot of people are on Twitter, and then you can pretty much follow exactly the same formula. So you're just going to have to look through everyone that's like, retweeted, commented, liked, click on them, see who they are. And then probably you're going to have to skip over to LinkedIn to see if they fit your ICP. So it might just take you a little bit longer, but pretty much it's exactly the same. And this refers back to that sales navigator search that we've been talking about. If the people engaging with your posts or with those thought leaders posts don't fit your ICP, go back to the account-based version. Go back to Beck Holland's original version, pick who you want to prospect first, and then filter them by people who have engaged in stuff over the last 30 days. And then you can go back and kind of do the emails with the same template, and you're making sure that there are people who fit the ICP and have actually commented on stuff.
Yep. Man, this is like, I have a big smile on my face because like I'm just learning. I just learned a whole new strategy that I think is going to be amazing for not only myself but the audience. This is crazy.
I would love to hear feedback from anybody who tries this. I've had a couple people message me and say like, I'm giving it a go, or even send me kind of their first email, how they've adjusted to the template and ask me if it sounds good. And I'm happy to give little edits and tweaks, that kind of thing. Yeah, I'd love to hear how it works for you guys. Another challenge with this is obviously the time that is spent. It is a little bit of manual work to click through who's liked. Like you might, I mean, luckily in my case, and I'm not like everybody else, I know that I'm very fortunate at Predictable Revenue, but we have a sales research team. So I basically can push off this very time consuming and difficult task to our sales research team, and they go through and click on, I'm not sure how exactly they would do it, if they would be writing out who the people are or kind of opening a new tab from the list of likes and comments, or what they're doing there. But when I did it for myself the first time, I literally was just clicking on every single person who liked and commented, and then seeing if they fit, and if they weren't a fit, exiting that tab. So it's a little bit time consuming. If you've got a research team, see if you can pull them in, or look at a tool like Expandy, because that has now the capability to pull those lists for you from a post. So it might be worth looking into there. And you still are spending a little bit of time doing the kind of cutting and pasting within the templates to make sure that it fits with whether they liked or commented. That's what we kind of chatted about when we were talking about the headline. I just have a liked/commented, or at least I did at the beginning. But a way to solve that is to actually just have two different sequences. One that is only if the person commented something relevant. One is if they liked. And then you can build them to just pull in those custom variables. As we chatted about, you're mapping them to a certain custom variable in your enablement tool. If you're putting that custom variable in your email template, it's a very personalized email that you haven't had to write a single word of. So that's a great way to do it. That is it.
I mean, so many good insights. And I was kind of thinking, like, if you do have assigned accounts, kind of how you can hack the same system would be to like go to Sales Navigator, those that have posted in the last 30 days. And then I would filter out by like ATL. So like above the line prospects, VP and above. Because what I have been seeing specifically during COVID is the more personalized, the chances are you're going to get a response.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of the AEs, even here at Okta, are trying to figure out like, how can we build more pipeline? But I'm just actually sending videos and I'm getting responses within like minutes, which is like very rare. So I would say, like, for any of you out there, go to like the last 30 days, click on like one or two of them, find a post that they liked. And actually, have you ever played with screenshots? Like, hey, I saw like you liked this post. Have you ever done that?
I haven't done that. I have done some videos like you are talking about. I used Vidyard to do that for a little while. I think the challenge might be that including like embedded images or embedded videos or links can often flag you in those spam traps. So that's something that I think is great to use in follow-up emails when you're kind of like continuing the company story, explaining more about who you are. But I think the kind of more short, concise, and sweet and relevant to that pain, you can make that first email without kind of adding any, don't even put a link to a case study, like just nothing else. I think in my experience has been a little bit better just in terms of the spam filter aspect. But it's definitely worth trying.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of take maybe your approach, but do it more to like my accounts. But anyways, that was like amazing. Andy, did you have any like questions for Sarah?
No, that was great. To me, one thing that stood out was that what if. It's like a soft challenge. I know where a lot of people talk about like, their strategy is to do soft ask now to intro into like an educational conversation. But that soft challenge like not only challenges the idea that you can help them, but also that that you can help them, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try that for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And that's all Beck. Yeah, genius.
Awesome. Well, I'm curious in trying out your strategy, and I will definitely follow up with you on if it works or not.
Yeah,
but
do.
Now we're kind of leading into the last section, which is a rapid fire questions. And so I'll lead it off. The first one is the hardest one, so I'll go easy. Just kidding. Which is, do you love to win or do you hate to lose?
That is the most difficult one. I think truly that I hate to lose.
Yeah.
I think that I don't have to be like the best in the world at the thing. I don't have to be like the number one top winner of all the things, but I do have to prove to myself that I can do it. So if I lose, then I'm not successful and I'm disappointed in myself. Doesn't matter what kind of external factors are at play or who else is kind of influencing that. It's more that I want to prove to myself that I can succeed, but it doesn't have to be. I can work towards being the best of the best, but first I got to not lose.
I love it. It's great.
I love it. I'm very similar in that aspect. And next question. Usually we ask this question of like, what are some advice that you would give to maybe SDRs in your position? We're going to flip that around today. What are bad recommendations you hear in the SDR profession that other people are giving?
Interesting. I see some, I've definitely filtered who I follow now to be people that I value their advice. So I probably am not seeing a whole lot of bad advice anymore, but I'm still getting bad emails or seeing bad emails be sent. So someone is giving advice somewhere telling people to do these things. One of the things is like the overly empathetic email. So absolutely, especially in the times of COVID, empathy is important. You're reaching out to a human being. You need to recognize that they are a human being and something is going on in the world, but you still need to like cut to the chase and you're not there to have a chat. So these emails that are like, hey, hope this finds you well. That's already like, you've already just wasted a whole sentence. I don't know why you need to put that in there. Hope this finds you well. Don't want to like put too much pressure, but here's something we can do. Here's what we've done for other people. Again, not too much pressure. I know it's a weird time. So if this is not a fit, you just let me know. But like, if it's a fit, let me know. Also, these kind of like fluffy qualifying terms that show that you're trying to be like soft and gentle and not pushy and salesy, but it's actually gross. Like it's just too like squidgy. I don't even know how to explain it. But I think an approach like Beck Holland's, even though you haven't touched on anything about the world or how tough their life might be, they still have got the pain and you are still just offering to solve that pain. So that is the most empathetic and relevant and like personal that you can be. It's researched and it's relevant. That is the best you can do. It doesn't need to be like this overly sappy, empathetic thing.
Yeah. Wow. I definitely concur on that. So that's some good advice for you, and hopefully the audience takes it to heart. Your specific strategy goes out, finds some wins, and reaches out. So what's the best way for people to reach out to you? Is that through like predictable revenue, or is that via LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Yeah, you can add me, send me a connection request, send me a message. I'll respond to you if you have any questions. If you do want to learn more about basically how to validate and learn about these types of strategies for you guys to do at your company, if you're a sales leader who's listening to this, then you can still reach out to me, but we'll talk about predictable revenue because of course we can help you do those kinds of things maybe a little bit quicker than you'd be able to do if you were just trying to get your reps to try out a bunch of different stuff.
Awesome. Andy, any closing thoughts?
Nope. Just thank you so much, Sarah. It's really been a pleasure. I'm going to run with this and report back on the progress.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to the SDR Live podcast. If you like this episode, please share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you tune in next week and have a fantastic week.